The president has told people around him this week that John Bolton wants to get him, quote, into a war. Bolton, you'll remember, led the cheering for the Iraq invasion in 2003. He supported the overthrow of Gaddafi in Libya a couple years later. He pushed for preemptive strikes on Iran and North Korea. He's advocated for regime change in Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua. Yes, Mr. President, John Bolton does want to get you into a war. It's all he wants. It's what he dreams about. Many wars, if possible. And if you're not careful, he'll do it.
The U.S. sending an aircraft carrier group to the Middle East to send what it calls a clear message to Iran.
Do you remember I always used to say, keep the oil. I wasn't a fan of Iraq. I didn't want to go into Iraq. But I will tell you, we should have kept the oil. Maybe you'll have another chance.
Last September, National Security Advisor John Bolton asked the Pentagon to provide military options on striking Iran.
Breaking news this morning, the U.S. National Security Council, which is led by John Bolton, asked the Pentagon to provide the White House with military options to strike Iran last year. Now let's listen to the Secretary of State here.
We will not let Iran get away with using a proxy force to attack an American interest. Iran will be held accountable.
Saddam Hussein and his regime have made no effort to disarm as required by the international community. Indeed, the facts and Iraq's behavior show that Saddam Hussein and his regime are concealing their efforts to produce more weapons of mass destruction.
I take the threat very seriously. I take the fact that he develops weapons of mass destruction very seriously. We can't let the world's worst leaders blackmail, threaten, hold freedom-loving nations hostage with the world's worst weapons.
America will not be held hostage to nuclear blackmail. We will not allow American cities to be threatened with destruction. And we will not allow a regime that chants death to America to gain access to the most deadly weapons on earth. The United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
Congressional rejection of this deal leaves any U.S. administration that is absolutely committed to preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon with one option: another war in the Middle East.
Our goal should be regime change in Iran. The declared policy of the United States should be regime change in Iran.
It's a show of U.S. military power and muscle. B-52 bombers headed to the Middle East alongside the USS Lincoln Carrier Group.
It is therefore incumbent on every country to join our efforts to change the regime's lawless behavior. We want every single country on board. This is among the President's top diplomatic priorities.
And also to watch over Iran. We'll be watching.
This past week, we have voted twice on a bill strengthening America's presence in the Middle East. And this includes legislation that is vitally important to Israel, our greatest ally.
President-elect Trump, my friend, congratulations on being elected President of the United States of America. You are a great friend of Israel. Over the years, you've expressed your support consistently, and I deeply appreciate it. The two of us, working closely together, will bring the great alliance between our two countries to even greater heights. May God bless our enduring alliance.
The top U.S. military official, who had served as Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, exposed to the world that the U.S. invasion of Iraq was just the beginning, and the real prize was Iran.
Right after 9/11, about 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
At this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
The Gaddafi regime has come to an end. The last major regime strongholds have fallen. The new government is consolidating the control over the country, and one of the world's longest-serving dictators is no more.
Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike on the airfield in Syria from where the chemical attack was launched.
President Trump announcing that for the first time the United States has taken direct military action against the Syrian regime.
The U.S. striking a terror target, an unmanned drone hitting al-Shabaab militants in Somalia.
The objectives of the regime are not going to change, and therefore the only solution is to change the regime itself. And that's why before 2019, we here will celebrate in Tehran. Thank you very much.
Starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Vladimir Putin flew into what the Sugol firing range near where the Russian, Chinese and Mongolian borders meet.
We have some ideas that are more than ideas that are going to be just, we like to win, and we like to win, we're going to win. We understand the best way to preserve the peace is to be prepared for combat. And the surest way to prevent conflict is to be totally unyielding and totally ready for conflict. If that should happen, America is a peace-loving nation. But rest assured, if we are forced to fight, we will engage the enemy with overwhelming force, like never before, like nobody's ever seen before.
Reassuring allies and talking tough on enemies. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has been touring the Middle East to try and win support and put pressure on Iran. He's pushing for an Arab military alliance to counter threats from Tehran.
The nations of the Middle East will never enjoy security, achieve economic stability, or advance the dreams of their people if Iran's revolutionary regime persists on its current course.
The same tactics are being used as were used in 2002 and early 2003 with regard to Iraq. The same people, the same tactics, the same litany, the same strategy, the same everything.
Saudi Arabia is our partner. They're our ally against Iran.
At my direction, elements of the 82nd Airborne Division, as well as key units of the United States Air Force, are arriving today to take up defensive positions in Saudi Arabia. I took this action to assist the Saudi Arabian government in the defense of its homeland.
Good afternoon. I was honored to welcome Crown Prince Abdullah to my ranch, a place that is very special for me, and a place where I welcome special guests to our country. The Crown Prince and I had a very cordial meeting that confirmed the strong relationship between Saudi Arabia and the United States of America.
Vince Morris, I'm with the New York Post. I have a question about Saudi Arabia. In reading the report, I noticed that the language that you use to describe Saudi Arabia is very vague, and it seemed actually a little watered down, given what that country's track record is. I wonder if you can explain that. And I also wonder if you can get into why you did not address any of the issues that have been raised recently by filmmaker Michael Moore about connections between the Saudi family and the bin Laden family and the Bush administration.
Well, I haven't seen Mr. Moore's film. I'm not sure what those allegations are.
We have found no evidence of the involvement of the Saudi government in the plot.